welcome to 30-Minute Reviews. I am Adam. So let's just talk about what happened during the Super Bowl. Not the game itself. I know that people don't give two shits about the actual events of the game. I'm talking about, in terms of trailer reveals and cool things like that will appeal to the nerd sphere of things. That whole aspect of the fan community. Yes, I do. Okay. Sorry, I just didn't know if I had my wallet on me. So we're going to talk about that. Really, the only big thing that happened that was new and newsworthy was, and it's pretty big, the second trailer for Multiverse of Madness. Now, I think I mentioned it on the show that I thought there was a chance that Marvel would do a big, here's what's coming this year thing, kind of like what DC did late last week, where it's like, look, here's our slate, here's what we have coming this year, just get ready for this. Now, Marvel had two things that they showed up with. They showed up with Multiverse of Madness with the TV spot version of the trailer, and they also showed up with another trailer for Moon Knight. And Moon Knight doesn't show too much more from what we've already seen. It's just, that trailer, that TV spot, they showed the full trailer during I think it was the Wild Card weekend when they had the game Monday night on ESPN. But then here they're showing they show just a little bit more. Just get a little taste and to see if they can get some people interested who may not have known about it before. I don't think there's enough there to really, get audiences intertwined. But Multiverse of Madness is going to have a huge, huge impact going forward. Multiverse of Madness, the trailer shows a lot of, a lot of really cool new imagery. We're seeing a lot of stuff that comes out of What If. Number one, we definitely saw Wanda in her zombie Wanda attire, as we saw her in What If. And I do really appreciate that. I think that would be, that's cool. I don't like the idea of making What If kind of like mandatory viewing to understand what's going on in Multiverse of Madness, considering I didn't particularly care for that show, and a lot of it I'm not 100% fluid on. Of course they show Wanda as Zombie Wanda, and I remember Zombie Wanda, I remember Captain Carter, I remember Strange Supreme, and things. Maybe I do remember more than I'm giving myself credit for, but I don't think there's necessarily a lot there to be like, this is a great thing that we're going to hitch our wagon to in its entirety, and it's like, this is going to be the big, everything you need to talk about is going to come from this. I think that's kind of a weird decision. I don't think it's particularly, I think from what we've seen with Star Wars, we've seen a certain fluidity that we may not have seen before between live action and animation, where people are more willing to accept things that are coming from other mediums and be like, oh, okay, that was in a cartoon, but it's also important here. I think that Star Wars really pioneered that and showcased that Marvel could do that in Multiverse of Madness. I just don't think that What If was a high enough quality show. I mean, visually it's great. I'm not saying it's not a beautiful show. I'm saying that in terms of the quality of the storylines and all of that, I feel like there might have been a drop off because I wanted to drop off watching that show. I didn't want to continue watching it, but I powered through and saw the whole thing. So yay me! But I guess it's one of those things where it's subjective, and I guess there are people who like it. But there's a lot of that, and then Ultron too. The Ultron bots, I'm loving the Ultron bots that are there. There's a voice in the trailer. I'm fairly certain that voice is, that voice is Professor X. I'm not crazy about that either, but if you listen to this show, and you listen to Beware of Spoilers, you know how I feel about Logan. Logan is probably my favorite superhero movie of all time. I think that was a perfect send-off for both of those characters, and I feel like this cheapens their send-off if now Professor X is here. Look, I mean, they could always do, like, something different where it's like if Professor X from an alternate timeline. I just think that, it doesn't matter how you do it, it's still going to feel weird, because that character went off into the sunset in a perfect way. You can say it's an alternate timeline character, and you can say that, oh, this is Professor X from a universe that had X-Men, but it's not the X-Men you know of. It still isn't going to quite mesh for me. I feel like for this, like, I understand why they would use Professor X over, they would use Patrick Stewart over James McAvoy, but I feel like McAvoy would be the better choice between the two. Like, if I have to choose one of the two to use in this show, I think McAvoy would be the better choice. I understand using Xavier because he's the iconic version that people have, grown up with, and they're trying to nostalgia bait with him and all of that. And I'll admit that, like, when they first had that bit where you hear the voice, I'm like, I'm fairly certain that's Professor X. But then again, I did walk out of Eternals thinking that was Nick Fury's voice at the very end of the post-credit tag. I feel like that's, I could be wrong, but I feel like the general consensus on the internet is Professor X, from what I can see so far. So look, if that's where they're going, fine, I guess. Like, have fun, but I don't know. I feel like it's I feel like it's an odd decision to take that send-off that went so well and is so beloved by not. I mean, look, I'm using myself as like the avatar for everyone when I know that that's obviously not the case, and there are differing opinions and all of that. But I'm fairly certain the general consensus around the end of Logan and how, that character gets sent off at the end of Logan is that that's kind of the definitive way to send that character off. Like, for me, that moment when he's in the bed and we've seen him all movie and he's not exactly 100% lucid through most of the movie, and we see him there and he has that one moment of lucidity where he can sum up his entire life, and he's like, this is the best day I've had in a very long time. And he thinks he's talking to Logan, but he's talking to X-24, the clone of Logan. And he's like, I don't deserve it. Like, that moment where he has that moment of lucidity where he's like, I don't deserve this. And then him thinking that Logan was the one who killed him, and then Logan carrying him out, like the real Logan carrying him out after fake Logan kills him, like carrying him out of the room, and just like, it wasn't me, because he just wants Charles to know that, that he didn't kill him for what he did in the past, and it's such a powerful moment. And I think that, being like, oh, and here's Professor X again, and it's the same actor, it kind of cheapens that in a way that, like, we didn't get that kind of closure with Michael Keaton for Batman. We didn't get that kind of closure for Tobey Maguire or for Andrew Garfield for Spider-Man. We got that kind of closure. There's a finality to what happens in Logan that isn't present for any of the other returning characters who have returned from other things. Like, even Quicksilver, when it was announced that Evan Peters was going to be back in WandaVision playing Pietro Maximoff, like, that was in a Variety or in a Vanity Fair piece, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm fine with that. I understand that, because this character didn't get their final moment. They didn't say, we're done now, this is the end, and now we're going to, talk about, like, we're not going to give this character a new leg of the story after their legacy has ended. And I feel like now Multiverse of Madness is in this position where it can be the case of nostalgia bait going wrong. Because I do think that while a lot of people do hold Charles Xavier, as played by Patrick Stewart, as the paragon of the character, and there are a lot of people who do that, I don't think that, there are people who are like, yeah, bring him back, because he got his end. And he got his poetic end, based on what it should be in this story. It would be like, at this point, if they brought back, if they were to bring back the Barry Allen of of Earth 90, the one who is, John Wesley's ship on the 90s TV show, he has his send-off moment of going into the sunset and being like, this is my end, this is the end of my story. And then bringing him back after that would feel cheap. I'm not saying Jay Garrick, because Jay Garrick's a different guy, but if they were to do that, that would feel not undeserved per se, but more like not in the best interest of the story as a whole. Like, we've seen their end, let their end. That said, the rest of the trailer looks pretty cool. I think that's really my only gripe that I've seen with this movie, is that I don't think we need Professor X to be returning in the way he is. I think that's the fundamental issue I have, is that Professor X should just not come back for this. Or recast, or do or use McAvoy. But I think that using Patrick Stewart is a huge misstep that I feel like should, in an ideal world of people who claim to understand good writing, should bite them in the ass. And we'll wrap up there for today. So until next time, have a great rest of your week.